we have found another playable character. Yes, we have. There's not many playable characters in the world. We seem to keep finding them, though, and this Bitcoin space tends to really bring a lot of those to the surface. A lot of the playable characters seem to be in Bitcoin. It's kind of weird. Today we have the Village Idiot, one of the I keep saying this every time, but one of the smartest people I have been able to talk to so far, and I feel like this is going to be a pattern now through these last 10 episodes of continually saying this over and over again. But I had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with him at Bitcoin Miami 2023 in a month or so ago, and he is a true treasure, a treat. And I cannot wait for you to dive into what he has to say over the course of this next hour plus. Let me know your thoughts at the end, and some of the things he talks about, which are, again, role of faith and his journey towards faith, and his podcast he has coming up actually about this very subject, and being someone who wasn't believing and now is on that journey to finding that. And I see that as a common theme coming up over and over again, and truly looking for truth and his definition of what he looks for and what he thinks God is, but submitting to truth, being actually truthful, finding that truth. So like he says in here, there's three different aspects you can have. You can accept truth, you can deny truth, you can ignore it, or you can submit to truth. And that is the most important thing. So I really look forward to you getting into this and seeing what your thoughts are on this, because it really resonated with me. I actually changed some of my interview template because of the end of this interview today, as you'll see. So I appreciate you being here. Please let me know and the Village Idiot know what your thoughts and comments are, and we'll see you at the end. Today, we have a special treat. We have the Village Idiot. Sir, fine, sir. Thank you so much. The thing I love, we met in Bitcoin in Miami at Bitcoin 2023, and through a mutual friend, and which I won't dox anything here. So a mutual friend, and stayed together. And it was only in Bitcoin land do you just randomly kind of get together, and it's like, wow, I've known you my whole life, and you're just constantly over and over again in Bitcoin. So it's wonderful to have you, and just brother from another mother, day one. So appreciate you being here, brother.
100%, man. Thank you for having me on. Looking forward to it. That was my first sort of public outing in the Bitcoin world. I've been lurking for years, but it's been an absolute pleasure.
So speaking of that, what was that road? And we talked about it a bit in Miami. Obviously, I think we stayed up, all hours of the night for a night or two or whatever it was, and we're talking about a lot of this stuff. So please share with everyone, what was that road to Bitcoin? What was the road just, kind of growing up even? And like I was telling you before we started, like, it's kids education is big to me, and just dumbing it down, quite honestly. And I know people get offended by that term, but like, we have to dumb things down. We have to, because humans think at that second, third, fourth grade reading level, things like that. That's just us. So what was that road like for you growing up as a kid, money, and what led that to Bitcoin eventually for you? What's that story like?
So I think that's a great, the relationship with money in the beginning. I had absolutely no fucking clue. Pardon my French here language. You can bleep me out if you need to.
Hey, good to go. That's YouTube's problem.
Yeah, I'm an idiot here. So as advertised. I had absolutely no frame of reference or comprehension of money. To be honest, I was probably anti-money. I sort of inherited some of my parents' let's say issues that they had grown up with regards to money, and I carried that around with me, unconsciously for the early part of my life into my late teens. I would say I had a disdain for money and generally speaking, people with money. That was my own issue that I had to contend with. And it took me having to try to make it on my own and run my own businesses and do right by the people that I was working with, just ethically, sort of morally. And I started to run into, I tried to do things by the rules, by what I thought was, the right thing to do. And I came to find out pretty quickly that, generally speaking, I was punished for doing things in the way that I thought was morally right, ethically right, doing right by people that I was working with, doing right by myself, doing right by customers, things like that. And that playing by the rules was basically unaffordable and like more or less not possible to do unless you had like, I don't even know at the time, like just,
Learning the
insane.
fiat ropes early.
Yeah, yeah, and I I kind of left. I left high school really early. I was kind of sick of high school. About 15, 16. Moved to LA, started working in film and TV as an actor. So I was on my own pretty quick in a big city that I was unfamiliar with, and so I sort of had to. I just got thrown into the deep end, I guess, as far as like economics is concerned, and by that I mean the Thomas Sowell's definition, right? The allocation of scarce resources that have alternative uses, which in that case was my time and my energy and my expertise or whatever skills I had at the time. So I very quickly started to become super frustrated with the rule makers or the government, whoever you want to lawyers, whoever you want to say, um, because I felt like, it kind of feels similar to what's going on in crypto right now. You got all these exchanges and these people that are trying to quote unquote play by the rules, and then they just get placated, you know, muzzled, slapped, shoved under a pillow, and then everybody who's there already gets to come in and have their way with the market, so to speak. So pretty quickly, I've always had the same fire as far as like treating people correctly. I believe in human flourishing. I'm very much believe in the individual, and I value that, and I value people's.
Hey, really quick, I want to annoy the hell out of you with a quick little break to just remind you that we have to share the signal within the noise because the algorithms hate truth. The algorithm hates truth. So we have to do all that we can to spread the signal. The faster we do that, the quicker change comes to the world. We need to be the change we seek to be. What are we doing? What am I doing? What are you doing to build a future? Also, if you want a written version of a lot of what we do here, please go to the description and find the link to our blog, our Substack, as well as you will see many links to either the work or the companies, the places you can find all the playable characters here that we talk to and how you can connect with them. So now back to the show. Thank you.
Individuality, and I saw pretty quickly that all of that was very much being disincentivized at the government level. So, excuse me, I had through that I had the I should say the opportunity to deal with banks more so than I would otherwise, just having to be an employee, things like that. And so it actually very quickly made sense to me. A lot of people, I didn't understand why Bitcoin, but the day that I heard about crypto and I started researching it, I mean, that day I was in. I was all in. I was trying to figure out how to buy stuff. This was early 2017, so things weren't that sophisticated yet. It was very, even buying on Coinbase was like tough to do. It was like early MetaMask, weird credit card transactions. It was pretty early still then, but what I understood was the fundamental value of having no counterparty, of having to not deal with a financial intermediary or a government intermediary who clearly does not have your best interest at heart. So I think that's like as succinct as I could get it. I just immediately understood the value of that. And it took me a couple of years to understand why Bitcoin was, the solution to the decentralization issue. But I was on board immediately, just removing counterparties. I just didn't understand that the new counterparty would be, the software company.
What was the aha moment? Like what was that when you really kind of realized like, oh wow, like Bitcoin is the answer to all of these issues we're dealing with?
The answer that pops into my I'll answer it this way, and then maybe we could go backwards if it's not the exact question you were asking. But There were three primary pillars that made Bitcoin click for me. Three articles. Bitcoin and the Number Zero by Robert Breedlove. Bitcoin is Time by Gigi, and Money Messiah by John Vallis. Those I had to, and I had to reread. I had to read those all a few times. I would say those were the things that started to get me to ask questions that I had never asked before. Like, what is time? I had to start reading physics books. I started my career as an actor. I've been an artist my whole life. These were not questions that I was asking myself. But it wasn't until I started to understand what entropy was, that Bitcoin started to click for me at all. It really, in theory, it all clicked. Counterparty risk, we can send money to each other, peer to peer, all of that. I was totally like, that made sense immediately. But why Bitcoin didn't really click until I started to have an understanding of what entropy was. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but
yeah, no, it does. I mean, it's fascinating because everyone has a different, aha moment, right? Everyone's got a different thing that kind of clicked for them. Everyone's brain is very different. What was when you were in that time space? So like, what was the timeline, I guess? So like 2017, it was that when it kind of clicked for you, when you were reading those articles and everything kind of clicked, and you were kind of in there before that? Were you in the altcoins before that, or was 2017 the entry into crypto in general, and then it took like a year? Like, what was that time frame like when that all kind of fleshed itself out?
So a buddy of mine, I was working downtown LA at the time. I remember this, and a buddy of mine happened to be. I was just at my desk, and a buddy of mine happened to call me, and he had mentioned Ethereum and crypto a couple of times. But I did kind of the usual. Like, okay, I don't know what this is. I didn't, like, zero time, just something in passing. Someone was like, hey, you should check this out. He called me, he said, hey man, you gonna, let's talk about Ethereum. You gonna mine some Ethereum? I was like, all right. I had a day, literally had nothing to do, which was kind of rare. And so I asked him a couple questions, like, what is this thing? Like, explain crypto from your standpoint. And it just gave me enough to start Googling. And I had been familiar enough at that point, at least with, equities, in real, it's just trading some stocks, at least enough to understand like price, units, how many outstanding shares, so to speak. So I had at least that frame of reference. And that day, I went to CoinMarketCap, I think is what he told me to go to. And and then you're just blasted with this massive list of coins. And I went, oh shit. So I just started clicking on stuff. And I think I started trying to buy stuff that day. And I just started reading. I started consuming as much as I possibly could. My hypothesis in the beginning was that I'm stupid. And so I don't know what any of this shit means, but it seems interesting. So I should probably buy as everything that I can that at least is like a large market cap coin. So I just bought a little bit of everything. I had, at the time, you pretty much had to buy Bitcoin to trade anything else. So of course you had Bitcoin. You couldn't like just buy. It was very difficult, I should say, to buy certain coins just with cash. So you had to buy Bitcoin and then trade them. So of course you owned Bitcoin. I owned Ethereum. I became a big fan of XRP for a number of years, probably like 2 or 3. So I just owned everything, and I knew that I didn't understand the technical ramifications of any of this. And it probably took me, let's see, it took me about 2 years and reading really obscure stuff that I never would have read ever. I'm like reading these Warren Mosler books on central banking and just weird stuff. And it took me about 2 years to start to develop an understanding of how the financial plumbing worked in the first place. The first big thing for me was understanding the treasury market. I did not understand that at all. So that was huge for me. But it probably wasn't until maybe mid 2019, late 2019, something like that, that those 3 articles that I mentioned really started to permeate my consciousness. And it was combined with that, I'm working on, I'm working on a project for filmmakers right now that would be Lightning centric, but at the time I wanted to build this on the XRP ledger because it was the only thing that would allow you to open private channels and do 50,000 transactions a second for free, basically. And it was a fantastic piece of software. I still think so. But I tried to run a node. I tried to figure out how to run a node and do all of that. And then I went, oh, like, this is literally impossible. Like, there's no, I can't. You would need like an enterprise class setup and IT. And I was just like, wait, what? So I ran into that wall. Right around the same time that these articles were starting to permeate my consciousness, I had an understanding of how markets work that I hadn't understood before. And it was understanding that running a node on Bitcoin was intentionally simple and easy and small. That was a major click for me because I had actually tried to run a node on this other, platform, and I was like, this is literally, like, I can't. I don't know, not happening.
That's a huge aha right there, I think. And I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough, but when people really get into it and see that, that's a huge game changer.
Yep. I really think that it is. It's the difference. It really is the difference. Because before that, you just think of it like technology, like, oh, faster, cheaper, blah, 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 but, that's true, I think, apparently for everything but money.
Right. So true. What, and really quick, I was going to ask you this earlier too, right when we started, but what was the reason for the name? So the Village Idiot, where does that come into play with all this? How did that come about?
So what I'm trying to do on this show, so Bitcoin has brought me, I don't want to say to God, but that's what I mean. The show, the tagline, the line of the show is "Join me on my quest to find God." And when I say God, I mean truth, objective truth, the truth. And Bitcoin afforded me the opportunity, along with the concept of physics. All of these things sort of coalesced. It was like I understood Bitcoin, and then these other things happened, boom, 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 and then I started to go, oh, I think I understand now what some of these religions are talking about, and some of these people are talking about. I started to understand that at a level that I had not previously, and I've never been like a hardcore atheist. I realized that I was staunchly against corrupt dogmatic institutions that masquerade as religions. Definitely anti that. Still am, will be forever. But I had confused the institutions masquerading as the thing, as I confused that and the thing itself. So I guess objectivity, which I had always just taken for granted, I started to understand this debate of subjective truth and objective truth, because I was just like, well, the truth is obviously objective. I literally thought zero about it because it's obvious. But Bitcoin allowed me to start to understand how you can manipulate what I would call the Akashic realm, the realm of information. Oh, the other thing that really helped me start to understand Bitcoin was, if there was big changes going on in my life, was that I had to teach myself how to do my books. I had to teach myself bookkeeping because things were starting to get out of hand and I was too stressed out. So I started to understand how you can just manipulate numbers on a ledger, or you can manipulate the description or the intent, and you can mask things, and you can be creative, and you can manipulate, you can bend the truth. So I started to understand at a different level how words can do that. I know I'm all over the place, but Bitcoin is time, fusing this to the physical realm, which you can't, the point of a ledger, like, yes, the ledger is useless unless you have time involved, right? You need an order of things. So anyway, all of that was going on kind of at the same time. So all of it sort of coalesced all of it sort of ended at like, oh man, that really what this is all about is truth. Everything is about the truth. Everything, or everything that we do is dependent upon this. And so we had better figure out what the truth is, or get as close to it as we possibly can, because literally our lives depend on it. And so I decided to do a show about my journey to God, or the truth. And so it'll be certainly, there'll certainly be a lot of religion on the show, but it's about the truth. It's about truth, objective truth. And so the Village Idiot, is a tarot card. The number 0 tarot card is the Fool, and everything starts and ends with the Fool. And so he sets out on his journey basically as a moron. And that's how all of our journeys start out. You have to start from a place of ignorance. If you don't, you're not going to learn anything. You're not. If you think that you already know, or if you think that you are the authority, you're missing out on the truth itself. So it's a long-winded answer, but there you go.
No, it's beautiful. It makes me think of so many different things. And one of them too, I think, which, I think, again, we're human, so we tend to, we think in human terms, right? And I think one of the things with religion in general is that as humans, we tend to take too much credence in the human aspect of religion, right? We're looking at the leaders maybe in religion, and we're taking that as like the gospel instead of the gospel itself.
Yes.
It's like, well, I don't like this religion, or I'm not doing this because someone did something. Well, they're all human. I'm Catholic. The Pope is human. So it's, at the end of the day, he's not God. And some people are, might get, and again, this is what I think is fascinating too. Every single human being, doesn't matter who you are, what religion you are, all 8 billion people, they all have a different form of their religion in their head, right? And this is kind of what you just talked about with dogma. You could have had, there's 8 billion different teachers, or 1 billion different teachers throughout life teaching their own version, like how they were taught the religion, right? So like, there's literally trillions of different versions of all these religions in the world, in a sense, right? When you start going down this rabbit hole of thinking, and it's like so mind bending and mind blowing that, and then it comes back to like psychology, and just everything's psychology, right? Like how we're thinking, how we interpret the world is just all psychology. Money is a psychological engine. It's all psychological. And it's just really fascinating when you get into it. And at the end of the day, I think we tend, as humans, what I'm getting at is we miss the forest from the trees a lot of times. Instead of thinking, what is God and truth and objective truth, and we look at like humans, the fallible side of human nature, and we're like, oh no. And it's like, all right, well, if there's evil, then there has to be the polar opposite. That's the law of polarity. There has to be extreme, perfectness. Like if there's evil, then there's perfect. There's a God, So anyway, it's really fascinating. But I love that. I was just talking to Opti, who does Simply Bitcoin, the other day. He went on we talked about religion a bunch, and just his journey from being, growing up and just finding faith. So anyway, I'm kind of going on and on, but I think it's such a fascinating topic that people are starting to come to more now.
Yep. I agree. I think I think Bitcoin. One of the things that I started to understand and appreciate about what Jesus was doing, and part of the revolution there, was that he was basically saying, hey, anybody who's telling you that there's that they're in between your relation, you have to go through them to get to God, like they're out. Like that's a lie. And that rings true to me. Of course, that's true. And crypto all sort of feels a similar way. If I have to go through somebody else's filter in order to access the truth, then it ain't the truth. It's just not. And it's not going to work out well in the long run. So give me, a crack line straight to the source, right? Here's my node. Here's the whole ledger. I don't need you to tell me what the truth is. I have the truth right here. Now, I have caveats on that. I have some opinions about humans' ability to even, we don't have the bandwidth, I don't think, to understand or comprehend or process the truth in totality. If we had the bandwidth to do that, we'd be God, literally. So,
right.
We have our experience.
That's why people can't see God. Yeah. we too much. Yeah, exactly.
Too much.
Yeah.
Too much data.
Too much. Literally. Man, it's just such a fascinating talk. And again, I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm not a scholar in any sense. I have a strong faith, but I wish I could, and that's where I always say a lot of times, I question everything with boldness, even the existence of God himself. It's the Thomas Jefferson line. And because it's a journey, it's a life of trying to figure out truth, right? And trying to figure out what truth is and what God is and who God is. And that's, you never get the answer. And I think that's how, at least in my eyes, I know there's God, because no one can sit here and say there's not God, and that is faith itself, is understanding that, hey, I'm human, and if I was perfect and I knew everything in the world, then I could consider myself like, hey, I'm God, and there can't be God because I am perfect and everything is perfect, and I am literally infinite intelligence, and I know everything, but I am nowhere close to that. So I know there's something, so anyway, it's absolutely fascinating. You can go down this for hours and hours.
Yeah.
What did Oh,
No,
sorry, go ahead.
no.
No, so like in this vein though, what did you study growing up? Even like how did you, like, a little bit more about this journey? Like, what did you study even growing up that kind of made you who you were, but then also gave you the foundation to get into what you're doing now? Obviously, whether it's Bitcoin, finding truth, finding God, objective truth. What was your kind of foundation, your basis growing up, that kind of led you down this path and that gave you that foundation to stand on?
Um, barring, whatever's like immeasurable, in terms of what I just came into the plane with, um, that's unknowable, I guess. But ironically, I can say that my parents, um, were also the source of that. So, my mom would be considered, I consider her a classical liberal, an old school liberal,
Mm.
an actual liberal, not a
Actual,
leftist.
yeah, actual liberal, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she um, fundamentally believes in, human rights, free speech, um, the pillars of American society. Basically, she doesn't really understand how the money aspect of things works. But at the end of the day, she has a strong opinion about the value of human life, and not being told what to do and how to do things, and being able to self-actualize, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely I got a strong sense of values from them in that regard. Um, and but I've also just had a very, very strong sense of, I don't know if strong sense is the right word, but I do not like being told what to do. Um, I like to I prefer to have a relationship with the source myself. Like, if I have to learn something, I need to go do it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have some questions or I need some advice, like, cool. But like in school, I was never really good with the authority thing, which is why I left so early, because it just seems so not productive. Really, it's so slow when you have to like just do something because somebody's telling you to do a thing, because it's like, let's just do the thing. Um, so I don't know. I started out like really young. I've always really, really identified with the American Revolution. I don't know if identified the right word, but fascinated by it. Maybe in some sort of past life I was involved in that. But those values have always been just of the utmost importance for me. That authority itself, almost by definition, becomes corrupt. Like, once you find yourself in that position, it starts to tear you apart. And it's just how it happens. It's just what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, whatever we can do to stop that and decentralize that, and afford people the opportunity to come to their own conclusions or come to the truth in their own way, I value those things highly, for whatever reason.
Yeah, man, and that's a whole another rabbit hole that we could go down. Just the American Revolution, and I had this thing. I was just in the last day or so. We are doing our BJ Dichter and I doing the political spaces we started a couple weeks ago, right after Bitcoin Miami, And just thinking about the revolution, and I was thinking about the founding fathers and the Constitutional Convention and the Federalist Papers, and them arguing and showing the people like, hey, this is why we're doing this. This is what we're giving you, and like being transparent, like weird. That's a weird concept, things like that, and giving that argument. And it's funny because I thought about Bitcoin in like Twitter Spaces and like what's actually happening in the public sphere now, which is the HOTES stuff, even, right? Like putting bounties on people and saying, hey, I will do this if you go tell your side story and you go tell your side story and you actually debate, because we've gotten so far away from the Lincoln Douglas debates and all these things, right, where people just go talk like this for hours, have to explain the other side, stuff like that. But I feel like now we're getting back to that. We're getting back to that pendulum swinging back the other way, how we were founded, people actually debating, being forced to debate. Hota is not just doing ridiculous stuff. I was just seeing he's throwing up articles of like people writing articles saying like why you shouldn't debate it. Like that's like the gotcha. And it's like the very fact that you just not showing up is the answer in and of itself, right? Like that is the answer. And I think I think of that is we are in the constitutional convention period right now of Bitcoin and the whole system changing. And we're all arguing. We go on, we all talk about these things. We go into Twitter Spaces and we're constantly arguing back and forth of what should be there and what shouldn't be there, and the ethos. That's what they were doing 250 years ago. It's the same exact thing. And we're going to look back, I think 100 years from now, people will look back and be like, wow, that time period, they were like figuring out what was going to be and like how it was going to be. And I don't know. Anyway, what are your thoughts on that? Because I was thinking about that just this week of that and like how it was revolutionary, like the Revolutionary War.
I think Bitcoin's the most American technology that's ever been stumbled upon, like without a doubt. I think the thing about the revolution, about the founding fathers, about the character of people who started this whole thing is that they were seeking truth. They made themselves subservient to what was true, not what they wanted to be true. Obviously, I'm sure we could pick that apart, and there's a lot of people who maybe
they're still humans. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But at least they were trying to submit to what is rather than how they wanted things to be. Yes. And they were able to, my hypothesis is like, again, we can't individually know all of the truth. We can experience our perspective, our view of the truth, I guess. But the sooner we align ourselves with the truth, the better. Which is to say, the analogy that I use is this: when it comes to the truth, we have three options. We can pretend like it's not the truth, we can accept the truth, or we can submit to the truth. So if I use gravity as an analogy, I can tell you that gravity isn't my truth and the laws of physics aren't my truth, and I'm going to die very quickly. If I don't respect that law, I'm going to walk off a cliff or what have you, and that'll be that for me. The other option is I can accept the truth, which is to say, hey, like I definitely, if I walk off the edge there, I'm pretty much going to die. So I accept that truth. I'm just not going to go near the edge. I'm just not going to deal with this gravity thing, and I'm going to move on with my life. Okay, fine. That's okay. At least you won't die as quickly. But there's a third option, which is submission to the truth. And submission to the truth is accepting it to the extent that you learn about it. You want to understand what it is, why it is, how it is. You don't impose your will on it. You submit yourself wholly to whatever that truth is, in this case, gravity. Okay, well, if you submit to gravity, you get to leave orbit. You get to enter the solar system. There's a big difference between accepting the truth and submitting to the truth. So I think that the people who founded this country, and one of the reasons this country was so successful, is because we were trying to get closer to what the rules of the game actually are, which is to say a decentralized power structure. I think Jason Lowry would has made comments about this, like, power is fully decentralized. Watts, joules, everyone has access to real power. And so I think one of the things that is just so impressive to me is that they understood that. And they were trying to bring us closer to the laws of nature. I don't know if that's the appropriate term, but they were really trying to get closer to the truth. And of course, we're so far away from that right now, and this is why we're experiencing problems. Like the American experiment didn't fail. Like we failed the American experiment. We did the same thing that always happens, which we centralize. What we're experiencing are symptoms of socialism, not capitalism, not free markets, but unfree markets. This is what's going on. Anyway,
got further and further from the center, right? Like further and further from truth.
Yes.
And that's kind of the nature of humans, right? We got 250 years away and it keeps spiraling further and further away from the core, from the truth.
We're dealing with this thing here, which thinks that it's the authority. Like it's not. It's not the authority. It just isn't.
So in saying, all of that, were there books, videos, things that you read to to help refine that, or like that spurred that in you? I mean, it sounds like obviously you were kind of like that by nature, your environment, obviously your parents, your mother kind of instilled that in you, obviously to a degree, questioning things, like looking for answers. But were there certain things, like you said, Thomas Sowell, one of my favorites. I mean, my goodness, if you don't think we live in a clown world, if you don't think there's an agenda behind media and academia, the fact that man isn't like the most famous man in America is mind-blowing to me. So were there things like that, like mentors, people like him, that when you were growing up, that kind of led you down that path?
Yeah, two things. One of them was a mentor. He was like a grandfather to me. And it was very much almost a spiritual experience, because everything that I had carried around, the pain and disdain and frustration, and I don't want to say hatred, but all of the negative baggage that I was carrying around from my parents about money and people with money, I was able to interface with somebody in my family who would have checked all of those boxes, and somebody that I would have had animosity towards, or dismissed, or didn't like, or distrusted, or what have you. But I was sort of forced to be in his orbit, and he was able to completely dismantle everything that I thought about him and his circumstance and people in that circumstance. He was able to absolutely demolish it. And I don't even mean intellectually. Like, although that's true, it was just behaviorally. He was a kind human being. He took me under his wing, and he gave me attention and answered questions, and showed me things that I had never seen before. It was literally like, I guess what I'm trying to say is the real access way in was not some intellectual submission. It was just, he was a good human being, and he was able to completely reprogram and rewire everything that I had grown up thinking that I knew. So that was number one, which I think is necessary. If you have this like emotional dynamic that's running, your life, or how you see people, or how you see the world, like an intellectual debate is not going to solve that. Like you have an affection problem. You have a love problem, right? Like you're defending some part of yourself that's been hurt, and you need to go figure that out first. So that was number one. That was sort of the emotional component. Once that had been opened up, and I was able to recognize how wrong I was, which generally I was okay at that, like, thank God I was okay at that. I'm an idiot. Like, I'm wrong, 100% of the time, until the last time I do something, in which case it's kind of right, because I've just banged around and bumped into every piece of furniture in the room until I found the light switch. But the second component of it, which was the intellectual component, I suppose, once the emotional component was opened up, was Thomas Sowell. I literally was at a library in Santa Monica, and I was like, I don't have any fucking clue. Literally, I didn't even know who Thomas Sowell was. I was like, I'm going to walk through Barnes and Noble or whatever it was, and there was just a book that said Basic Economics, and I was like, sounds good.
That's amazing.
Little did I know who he was, and um, so it took me quite a while to like finish that book. But even just the first half of that book, like fundamentally changed my perspective on everything.
I, man, it really is a crime. At first, I should say first, your story about your grandfather, that is, boy, is that impactful. That's and it's what life is about at the end of the day. Like we all lose loved ones, things like that. In the last few years, we've had, me and my wife, grandparents pass away, things like that. And you realize, some of them, they're all older, fortunately, around 90, but some of them were unexpected, some of them weren't. But you start really thinking, man, like, and then they have these things, right? These possessions, and then they're just kind of like, okay, then they're there. People are getting rid of stuff and whatever, and that's just natural. But you realize, like, man, from dust you became, and to dust you shall return. Like,
Yep.
at the end of the day, what are you taking with you? Your mind, your heart, your soul. That's it. Your spirit. That's it. So you better have that right. You better have that right. And like that, your story about your grandfather kind of resonated with me, because I believe, when you get to the gates, and God asked you, what did you do for my kingdom? He can say that, like, hey, I changed this boy's life. I changed, or whatever. Like, that's really all life's about at the end of the day. I mean, it gives me chills thinking about it. It's not like, oh, I had 6 Ferraris, whatever. It's like, hey, I gave that boy
You're in.
attention. Yeah, exactly. Like, I gave one of your sons attention, and I gave him love, and I gave him learning. And that's, and the Bible talks about that a lot, ironically. Like, how you treat my children is how you treat me, stuff like that. I think so. It just, boy, that gives me chills thinking about it. So I think that can go kind of missed. So I wanted to bring that to attention again, just because that is so important. My goodness. And then Thomas Sowell, Thomas Sowell, boy, oh boy, again, like, how is he not one of the most famous men in America, especially in the times we live in now? uh Mind blowing to me. So, geez.
Dude is a legend. Like, just one of the most cogent, coherent, reasonable human beings.
And started to change his mind, right? It started one way in life, and then completely change his mind, everything, and it was able to have the humility to change his entire life and how he saw things.
Yep. Yep.
Unbelievable. And still
Yep.
kicking. He's got to be like 90, right? I mean, he's still rolling. He's probably right around there somewhere, and
Yep.
still kicking and
Yep.
going.
He's
So,
up there. And I think that's the key, right? Like, back to the theme, right? Like, Thomas Sowell was interested in the truth. And if you're interested in the truth genuinely, then you have absolutely no problem shedding yourself of shitty ideas, bad habits, whatever they might be. If you're really interested in the truth, you will let go of it as quickly as you can, because you're there for something that's much bigger, much greater, and much more valuable, much more useful. Um, it's this sick. It's a sickness of people who are acting as if they are the authority. You know, it's sort of a tangent here, but one of the things, probably one of the other things that allowed me to get to where I'm at today mentally, is I've had the opportunity to work with some real masters of their craft to see what people behave like. This is it's a sweeping generalization here, but for the most part, when I was young, I was like looking for answers. And so when I'd come across somebody like that, I'd ask them specific questions, and to, infuriatingly, I would never get a straight answer. It would be like, well, it could be this, could be that. I don't know. We don't know.
yeah.
And so it's really like Dunning-Kruger. It's just Dunning-Kruger effect. It's like the more people know about something, the less convinced they are of anything. And they've just seen enough to put themselves, in the back seat to what's really driving the thing. So, anyway.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's made me think of another question, one or two, actually, just kind of what we've been talking about the last 5, 10, 15 minutes, but it's the founding documents. Do you believe those will play a bigger role in the future, or the white paper? And kind of what I mean is, you look at the founding documents of America, and it was kind of regional. Like it was something that shining city on a hill, what people could attain or what they could attain or what they could come to America for, but it was kind of regional. Like you had to kind of be in the borders of America to really enjoy that. And where Bitcoin is global, like that reach is global actually, and you're kind of enshrining those founding documents of America really across the globe and enabling that. What are your thoughts on that? Just speaking of the founding documents and kind of what role those will kind of both play, whether it's the founding documents or the white paper moving forward.
I think they're crucial. I think they're fundamental. The problem with the founding documents is that they're just words. They're required to be followed up with action. And the other problem with words is that the definition of words change. This is the issue with language, is people get to tweak and alter and manipulate what words mean, and the context changes. But America is an idea, and the idea is not killable. It's just straight up not killable. And that idea is that we should be as close to the truth as we can. And I think that it brought that mentality into an actionable structure. Is it perfect? Like, obviously not. But I think it's the closest we've gotten so far with respect to behaving in accordance with natural law and having respect for human life, as opposed to the government, or just the government, meaning corrupt people who get to do to you what they want with no consequence. Like the point is there should always be consequence, because that's how things actually work. So I think it's a great map. I don't think it's killable. I think that it's incredibly important for people to understand and keep building from, and for that virus to spread itself, out across these borders. I think that we're looking at the physical structure of the United States is altering, but the heart of it, I don't think that's killable. And I think that it will escape and coalesce somewhere else. And I think the same is probably true of the Bitcoin white paper, right? It's a mentality, it's an ethos, it's an idea.
Toothpaste out of the tube now.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Right. I mean, that's where you look at what's going on around the world, social media, just technology, the internet, toothpaste out of the tube for all these things. The globalists, they're the drowning man in water, and they're just trying to scrape anyone into the water with them. And that's what you see with CBDCs and all these different crazy things they're going to do. And they're trying global health passports and all this stuff. This is them just trying to regain all the things they've lost over the last number of decades, really. All the technology, all the centralization they've had, it's gone. So we're living through this volatile period that we're in, and going forward is them doing it to all of us. Quite honestly, that's all it is. It's them trying to do crazy stuff to all of us.
Yep.
So
they're trying to control something that they're not capable of controlling. They aren't the rules. Back to
they aren't objective truth.
Exactly.
Right.
Go away. Like, I will not submit to your bullshit.
Right. And completely antithetical to the Declaration, everything. The government working at the consent of the government, and they think it's completely opposite, and that's the volatility we're in and we're experiencing.
Yeah, I was talking to JD the other day, and we were rolling an episode, and I asked him at the end, what's the greatest risk to Christianity, and his answer was Christians. And I think the same is true of Bitcoiners. The same is true of people who are interested in
America.
Yeah. Yep. Like we have to take responsibility. And that's the difference here. There are people who don't take responsibility, and there are people who do. Like, it's kind of binary. And if you're not taking responsibility, then you are subservient to someone else and what they want. And it's not going to end well for you, because that person does not care about you at all. Yeah. Slash
Well
rant
said.
over.
Yeah, no, that's a whole rabbit hole we get down. So I don't always ask this of everybody, but do you believe that freedom comes from the way you live and how you operate your life, or does it come from the government? Does government give you your freedom, or is it how you choose to live your life?
I guess I would say that your freedom comes from from the source, from creation, from God. Um, you have we all have these base layer protocols that we can operate from. Um, this is the same thing as our founding documents. Like these are inalienable, God-given rights. These are not rights that are handed down by man. That's ludicrous, in my opinion. So, I think that uh, there are base level rules, right? Watts, energy, power, joules, whatever you want to say. And then there are sort of higher order. I don't know if higher order is the right word, whatever. But there are more intellectual. You got these two realms, right? Bitcoin. You got the Akashic realm, you got the information realm, and you got the physical realm, and you have to fuse the two. And so, the abstract, I guess, would be like something like the Bible. And I'm not like, come to my show, watch me learn about it. I literally don't. I haven't. But what I'm imagining is that that this is a rule set that we have learned over millennia that generally leads to the best outcome for human beings. If you behave in this way, in this circumstance, you're going to have a better outcome than if you don't. Like, put very simply.
I love that you say that, because that, again, we have this culture of like, you're telling me I can't do this with my life, or it's like the Bible, what God's telling you is that this is the optimal way to live. This is the way things work best. You can do whatever you want. You've been given free choice. Just
Yeah.
know your life will most likely, the odds say, harder. You're making life things harder on yourself. That's it. That's period. That's all there is to it. Like,
you're going to fall off the cliff and die. You can do that. Like, I
you can do it.
don't know why you would test me on the rule, but
Yes.
if you do, you can.
I mean, it's like we have what, you break, you leave God, you break the money, and then now we've got the W2F happened in 71. That site, such a brilliant site, so simple, so easy to see. You got divorces through the roof, all these different things, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yes, you can be a single mother. We all have single mothers in our lives. We all know them. We whatever their family members are, their friends or whatever. It's like, but if you're the man, you walk away, or you're the woman, you're going to do single mother or whatever, you're going to get divorced. You can do it. No one's saying like you can't do that. It's like you can do it. Free choice. You can do whatever you want. However, it's going to be harder. The odds say, and the math says, it's going to be more difficult. And that's where people like get into this thing where it's like, no, the Bible is telling you the optimal way to live. That's what God's saying. That's what the Bible is saying to you. Live this way, and you will be in grace with God. And that could mean many things. It could be you'll get to heaven. That could mean your life's going to be easier on earth. Like, there's many meanings to every word of the Bible. Has like 1,000 meanings, trillion meanings to it. And that's why I think people, when you don't study the Bible, you don't really get that effect. You don't understand that, man, this works in a trillion different ways. This reading, or the next reading, and the next reading. It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
That's the thing. So that's the thing about the truth. My journey to it, I was really trying to be concise and specific, but one part of it actually, one part of our journey to it was a buddy of mine and I were in my hot tub making jokes about the truth for like, it was one of those, it's just like, I am just going to beat the shit out of this joke.
Yes.
Like, this joke is fucked. And it took us, we were in there for probably 2.5, 3 hours going off on this joke. And the joke was like that, there's the truth, like in the corner of your house, like whether you accept it or not, like he's going to be sitting there for fucking eternity because he's the truth. And that's what the truth does. And you're going to die and he's still going to be sitting there like, well, next.
I told him. Yeah.
It
makes you think that Ayn Rand.
Exactly.
Ayn Rand quote. Yeah.
And like, the things that are closer to the truth, to your point about the Bible, the truth, it gets better. You get to look at it in any which way, and it's still true. That's what makes something true. It's no different than a great bottle of wine or a beautiful piece of music or a story well told, a good film. The more you consume it or watch it or experience it, the better it gets because it's closer to the truth. It's closer to the source. The things that don't get better over time are the things that are farther away. They crumble. Like, no, that wasn't it.
Well
The
said.
songs that we don't remember from decades past is because they sucked.
Dude, a great example of that, a modern day example, and you know this very well, having that this background, which is all of the woke media or movies, all these things coming out. There's a reason they aren't resonating and their box office flops. There is a reason for that because you're going further away from the truth. That is a prime example, modern day example.
Yep, 100%. I mean, just look at the Oscars. This used to be a cultural event. Viewership down 50% year over year over year over year. Even my mom is like, I can't watch this shit anymore. Like, if my mom's out on the Oscars, bro, like, it's over, dude.
It's amazing.
Done.
Amazing. It's an incredible example, though. It really is, and that's such a great way to tell people in a way, like remove cognitive dissonance from their lives. You can get all technical and intellectual with cognitive dissonance, and I do at times. But like a simple way is, hey, if you're going towards truth, people are going to resonate with it more, and you're going to attract more. If you're going away from truth, it kind of goes with like the left can't meme, or like progressives can't meme, socialists, communists can't meme because they don't have truth on their side. That's why there's very little memes in that world. But the right or whatever, the classical liberals, Bitcoiners, libertarian people, they have memes all day long because the truth is easy and people are attracted to it when you just accept and submit to truth, like you said.
100%. Do you have time for a slight rant?
Yeah.
Time. So I'm gonna try to. Maybe you can join me on this quest. I'm gonna try to. This is gonna fail miserably. I'm gonna try to change the cultural understanding of left and right. The problem, again, back to the problem. There are words. These are words. Liberal today. Like my mom's point of view on shit hasn't changed in 50 years. She would be now. She went from probably like what would have been considered an ultra leftist, by her parents' generation, to now she'd probably be considered, a bigoted racist, Jan.
Right.
She has the same fucking opinion she's had.
Yes.
The whole time.
Yes.
So the words change, which is the issue, which is really the problem, is that words,
weaponization of language. Yeah.
It's because it's not they're not bound by the physical. Okay, so I'm gonna go so left and right and all of that. I'm always like, oh, it doesn't even mean anything. But I've come up with not come up with, but I've put some stuff together that I've come across that I think works out. So Breedlove had on his show a while back. I think it was Breedlove. Yeah, and I forget the dude. I gotta get my shit together on this. But he was like a neurosurgeon or scientist or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about left hemisphere, right hemisphere, and the purposes of the hemispheres of the brain with regards to interacting with, reality or this space. Mm-hmm. His point was his final point in all of this was that there's some crazy mathematical equation that proves that what we're perceiving has a 0% probability of being reality itself, like none. Some mathematical equation. Okay, fine. But our left hemisphere deals with, I'm fucking this up, but it deals with separating images, separating objects. So, that's how I can tell that the lion isn't a bush, or, that the gas pedal is, there or whatever. And so if we shut off somebody's right hemisphere, they become, and this is what I'm trying to coin, totally overcome by their left hemisphere, which is so like, anorexia, right? These issues are like, that's a disorder of that. It's an inability to see a part of your body in context. So you become so myopic about this one thing. You literally can't zoom out and see it in the context of like, oh, my body actually looks decent. It's okay. It's like you get focused on this one little thing. So that's kind of what happens when your left hemisphere is taken over. Everything is separate. Everything is delineated. Everything is separate from one another, and nothing is connected. Nothing has life, and everything is lifeless. Mm-hmm. And of course, so the opposite is true. You cut off the left hemisphere and like, oh my, the stop sign soul is beautiful and it's talking to me, and there's literally an inability
Yes.
to see anything as separate from anything else, which I think there's truth in that too, of course. So what I'm going with is leftism is a mental circumstance by which a human being has become the left hemisphere of their brain has become overly dominant. And they see this is intersectionalism, right? These are people who are cut off from their source of any connection with any other human being, that they start to over delineate, hyper delineate, separate. Everyone's separate. Nobody's together. Nobody's one. We're not all one large group. So I'm gonna go with that. There's leftists, which, hey, there's a bunch of Republicans that are ultra leftists right now. And by leftist, I mean like overcome by the left hemisphere of their brain. Because Republican, Democrats, words don't even mean anything anymore. It's like nonsense.
Right.
So let's go. I'm gonna push the charge on this. Someone who is
I couldn't agree more. I mean, for a long time, for 20 years, I mean, you look at people sometimes, you're like, how can, in your right mind, can you honestly think that makes literally no coherent sense in nowhere in that rambling diatribe. Did you even close to make sense? What's the Happy Gilmore when he's like, or Billy Madison when he's like giving him the spiel, he's like, Sybil No would have been just fine. Oh man. I mean, it's just like, where in the world? And I've always come back to like, hey, everyone's brain is different, right? Like that's got to be what it is. Like some people, like we're all in the spectrum somewhere, like not all of our brains function equally and at all times. And it's just, it's life. Like, it is what it is. So I think I love it. I mean, I'm all in because it helps me kind of it fits with my narrative bias that I've thought for 20 years. I'm like, I think people's brains are firing a little differently. And then you add in like actual like synthetic drugs people are putting in their bodies now too, right? So now you have like we're all unique, we all have different brains, but now you're like, I'm gonna throw in 20 different pills on top of my brain and like whatever. It's a whole
you've removed
story.
yourself completely from your own signal from that's why alcohol is so bad, right? You cut yourself off from source, you become so egotistical. But but the brain's a muscle, right? Like we can practice these things. This is what breathing is, right? It's like why meditation is a thing, right? You're trying to slowly become less of a leftist and get more into your right hemisphere and connect with the moment and the things and the energy that's going around. We need both. We need to be skillful at both sides, and we need to work both of them. The hardcore leftist, like the dude in the gym, is like one arm is yoked, bro. He's got a sweet bicep, but everything else is like chicken legs. It's like it's not proportionate here.
So true. And it's hard to see because it's invisible, right? So it's hard to make out. What, in saying all that, what do you think we're missing as a society? Like you can go as grand as you want, or you can go as micro as you want. And like, what are we missing? Is it is it God? Is it just the broken money, or is it social media is bad? Like, what are we missing as a society? Is it not kids not being taught critical thinking? We've completely screwed up the formal education system. So that's in your mind, like, what is one of the big pillars, or could be something small, but what is something that we're missing? Society is just missing, and if we had this, it would just really start turning things around.
I think it's a two-part answer. I think we're all Bitcoiners here, so we all fundamentally understand the value proposition that Bitcoin brings into the fold with regards to incentives. But I think the answer is the truth. The answer is God, and I don't mean God as a large dude who's telling you what to do. I mean God is creation itself, a connection, a oneness to this realm that we inhabit. We're so in our heads. We're all leftists to some extent, which is how we're at this point in the first place, where we're questioning things that are obviously true, that need zero intellectualization at all. We're sitting around having debates about them. It's absurd. We're totally taken over by the left hemisphere of our brain. I think that I'm trying to come up with an analogy here. It'd be like, what's the issue is that, you're unhealthy. Like, well, what's the solution? Work out, Is working out the thing? No, but the side effects of working out are the thing you're looking for. It's just a way to get you there. And so I think we have a truth problem. We have a God problem. We have a truth problem. We're living in the left part of our brain, which just makes up random bullshit and convinces itself that that's reality. And there we have it. So what can we do about it? Well, we can craft a system for ourselves that gets us back to an incentive scheme that is more aligned with the truth, with reality, cause and effect, action, reaction. I do this, this happens, and it's measurable. So, I think that all problems stem from a lack of truth in some regard. And the solution to that is get as close to the truth as you can. And how is probably different for every generation and every civilization and society. I happen to think that Bitcoin will it's the 80-20. It'll get us most of the way there with the least amount of effort. We're still human beings. We're still going to have to contend with what it means to be a human being, and no technology is going to change that. We're still responsible. But man, we can definitely make it easy on ourselves.
Seriously, that's where I'm at, Bitcoin trading card is what I'm helping those guys do, writing, kids books about sound money, about Bitcoin, things like that. And the projects you guys are working on, which we can, talk about in a minute. And just, obviously the pod we talked about a little bit as well, but it's about that, right? Everything is about towards getting the youth and getting our kids, getting our families, getting people around us to start galvanizing toward the truth, and corralling people towards the truth. I mean, there's just no other way, because you can't, people sometimes, your friends, family, people look at you and you're like, okay, this guy again, or whatever. And it's just, unfortunately though, the truth is not on their side, right? You can't sit here and like have a conversation with me like, oh, things are great, Brandon. Well, have you drove through a city recently? Things aren't great, and the work is not done, and like, to me, I have a hard time like going and just like, I can't play fantasy sports. I can't do all the things like the average guy does. Cause it's like, what are we celebrating? Like, what am I resting from? Like, there's nothing, we've got a lot of work to do, guys. There's nothing to rest about, like this is all day, every day. You need to be, so, to me, I think that's where it's like the societal thing comes in saying that. You can touch on that if you want, but also you mentioned Bitcoin again, and we've weaved that throughout this entire time. But what do you think is the most important thing for people to understand or learn about Bitcoin? And it could be, friends, family, people that maybe aren't in it as much, but what do you think is something that people maybe take for granted, even Bitcoiners, they take for granted in Bitcoin? Or it's something that people really need to understand and learn, and it could be technical, it could be something ephemeral, like we've been talking about. What is it to you that you think is like, man, if people really just keyed in on this is a game changer?
Great question. A great question. I think the answer to the question depends on the audience. I'll give two. I'll try to give two answers. If I'm giving that answer to Bitcoiners, I think one of the things that a lot of Bitcoiners need to keep in mind and understand is that, and I say this coming based on my own journey from having a disdain for finance, economics, money, to having a reverence for them as tools. I think that Bitcoiners don't understand. They've forgotten how little most people actually know about finance. And I use finance separately from economics. I very much subscribe to Thomas Sowell's definition of economics, the allocation of scarce resources that have alternative uses. It's a great definition of economics. But most people don't have a fucking clue. They don't understand what an interest rate is or why they pay it. I mean, it is the knowledge about money and finance is abysmal. And so, the people get overwhelmed immediately when you start coming at them with hyper specific Bitcoin nerd speak, because they don't understand what's going on like at all. So there's a certain, element of try to identify the pain point and speak to that and get people to feel more confident in their own signal, to trust themselves. Like, hey, this doesn't seem right. Well,
Intuition. Yep.
it doesn't seem right because it's not right. It's not because you're an idiot. It's because it isn't right. You're like your instinct is correct. Now let's show you how your instinct is correct, based on your individual circumstance. So it's like before you can even get into the technical stuff, it's just like having some empathy for people and where they're at and why they don't know any of this stuff in the first place. It's intentional.
Yeah. Yes. It is. It truly is. Again, another rabbit hole to go down. You just touched on something though, with that, which is I love that answer. Trusting yourself. And we're so used to using our five senses, but we don't use. And I'm a big Bob Proctor fan. Our six higher faculties: will, perception, reason, memory, intuition, and I'm forgetting the other one now. But we don't use our intuition. We don't use our gut. Because like you said, we're so like just distracted, bread and circus with things going on that we don't even step back to think and trust your intuition. Like, does that make sense? Does it make sense to inject random things in my body when the goofball who's locked everything down the next week in California is partying with all the medical professionals in the locked out restaurant with no mask on? Like, use your intuition. Like, what is your gut telling you? Don't, that's why, like, I think one of the crazy things the last couple of years really proved to me too is plug your ears. If people walked around plugging their ears the whole time and just watch what people did, you would talk about finding truth. You would find truth real fast. You would start really quickly picking up on what's true and what's not. It's just fascinating to me.
I think that's a really well said, really good exercise, which gets back to kind of the theme of the show, which is we have this informational realm, the realm of words, and then we have the realm of actual what's going on. Like if people were bleeding out of their eyeballs and dropping dead on the street, I'd be like, all right,
we'd be sprinting there.
Inject me with whatever.
Yes, exactly.
That's not what was happening.
Yep.
It wasn't what was happening.
Yes.
That's its own rant, but
It's
I agree with you 100%.
The higher faculties. Yeah.
Oh, that was it. We're being, I've come to this realization, like as a society, we teach our children to ignore their instincts. Like we reinforce that more than we reinforce every other thing. Don't act out because you're uncomfortable. Don't tell me about that. You're wrong, or you're making my life inconvenient. So ignore how you feel. This is not okay. It's not acceptable. And that's, in my opinion, another hyper form of leftism, which is I'm not going to contend with the truth, the signal that I'm getting right now, which is I'm uncomfortable, or I don't believe this, or I don't trust that, because I can't intellectually justify it. Well, you don't have to, bro. You got 4 billion years of evolution on your side. Like you don't need to, you have an instinct that is unfathomable amounts of energy have coalesced to give you that instinct. Like trust that. You know what I mean?
100%. And it's funny. So like I have my show notes, and we'll wrap here in a minute or two and do a little last question or two. But I'm changing my show notes actually, because the template I use in this talk and in you saying that, it just makes me think of, because I had some of my stuff was, we talk about everyone's stories, and then we come toward the end and it's like, hey, obviously Bitcoin's wrapped throughout the talks, right? And obviously everyone in this Bitcoin world, whatever, it just gets wrapped in naturally, right? But then it's like, okay, wrap up. It's like some actual Bitcoin stuff, which we've been talking about for a few minutes. But it was a little bit more based on what I had. It was like on money and sound money principles. What's something that kids should be taught, things like that. But to me, I think it's because that question, and everyone says the same answer, right? So the first 10 people said the same answer, which was, well, it's different for everybody, which it is. Like, what's the most important part to learn about Bitcoin? That's not the right question. The right question is, the intuition. It's the higher faculties. What should we be refining and polishing for children and people, and giving this foundation so that they can find out what's most interesting to them, and using that ability, their instincts, like you said. I think that's the way things need to be phrased going forward, because we're like you said, trying to find truth. We're like out here in left field, like in formal schooling, and we're memorizing things, and we're completely off base. I mean, we're out here trying to find a needle in a haystack, when it's like, guys, you're like on a whole different planet. You're not in the right planet. You're never going to find the answer over here. So I think that's huge. It's huge. changing my template because of this last 5 minutes.
Yes, let's go.
Oh man. I think it is massive though. And it is, I'm trying to think of what the sixth one is: will, perception, reason, memory, perception, imagination. That's the other one. Imagination. So will, perception, reason, memory, intuition, and imagination. Those are the 6 higher faculties. And we choose not to, we just don't use them. Like you said, we're just, hey, what is the media telling us? Hey, what are our friends saying? Hey, what should I be memorizing over here? What does Google say? What is this,
that all comes down to an abdication of responsibility. I hate to be like old man Bennett over here, but it's true. If you do not take responsibility for the decisions that you make, you are literally putting yourself in somebody else's hands. I don't, in other words, like, we do it because we don't want to bear the burden or feel the feelings of being wrong. But by cutting off our opportunity to be wrong, we completely remove our opportunity to be right and to take responsibility and to,
so good.
You know what I mean? Like you can't,
Yes.
you have to have both. You can't just have the one, which is, I want to get past this and ignore it, so I'm just going to have somebody else do it for me. Like, it's not going to end well. It's not going to end well for anybody. This is my problem. This is my concern with AI. Like, I mean, okay, like, this thing isn't the truth. I'm sorry, but whatever, guys.
Well, and it's funny. That's kind of my last, big question in a way, which is that, like, where do you see this going forward? Whether it's AI, Bitcoin, how this all plays together, geopolitical things going on. What are the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15, whatever? Like, what is this next kind of like decade or so in your mind? How does it play out? Like, what do things look like 10 years from now, 2032, 2034?
Man, I hope better. Things could be worse too. I hope not worse. But look, there's a couple outcomes, right? Like, either we start pulling ourselves out of the hole, or we don't, or we go further into the hole. If we go further into the hole, like, I don't know, man. Like, it's dark times, I guess. But if we don't, then I think what we're going to look at is a full scale dismantling of the structures that were built over the last, I don't know, man, like 400 years, 500 years, whatever, fall of Rome, Dark Ages, whatever started coming in after that. If we're going to get closer, if Bitcoin is going to allow us to be closer to the truth, then all of these institutions and structures that are built on lies are going to be full scale, totally dismantled. And that's scary. That doesn't sound fun, but if we're going to prosper and thrive, then I think it's necessary. And so if Bitcoin does what we think it can do, I think that we're going to look at, and I don't know how long there's two things in every trade, right? Direction and timing. I don't know about the timing, but if we're right directionally, then I think that the entire world starts to open up to humanity. And we get to choose what rules to play by, and we get to go make that bet ourselves. The other thing that I've had thoughts about that are a little bit sort of nerve-wracking, right? Like, what the whole reason we are in the mess we are in right now is because people didn't want to be uncomfortable, right? Like, I don't want to be inconvenienced. I don't want to be uncomfortable. So I'm going to, build this web of lies. And of course, the irony is that our trying to be comfortable is going to be the thing that makes us the most uncomfortable, because it's not going to work and you're going to run into problems. And so if the Bitcoin thesis works out, and I could be wrong here, this is just a thought, I think things might get a lot more brutal than they are now. They might feel a lot more brutal. Like, you're really gonna have to to add value, work your ass off, be lean, so to speak. You're going to be forced to take responsibility. Just like in nature, there's no freebies. We're back to like the real trade-off of energy back and forth. I think that might be the case. Things might get rough before they get a lot better. That being said, I guess my counter to that, I'm just arguing with myself here, but I think the counter to that might be that we actually allow ourselves to become so the level of prosperity that we're capable of right now, but we're inhibited by, in a debt-based system. So if we can get to that point where people really aren't, I mean, we're all talking about AI killing jobs. Like most of these fucking jobs need to go. Like it's dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Like my first job was at McDonald's. That shit sucked. It's not. This is not a worthwhile expenditure of what human beings are capable of. Like it's an insult to the form, in my opinion. So get rid of them. Let's get rid of these jobs, and let's get people focusing on whatever the next stage is in Maslow's hierarchy, self-actualization, what have you. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's a bad idea. Like maybe we're not ready for that yet, and we need it's not going to go well. But but I don't think so, man. Like I really think that human beings, generally speaking, thrive when their incentive system demands that they take responsibility for their life, and I think that that's how life opens up. It opens itself up to people when they make the choice, the conscious choice about what to do and how to do it, because you can't really get honest feedback from life if you're not the one really making the decision. So I hope we get back to that somehow, some way. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. I mean, you summed that up perfectly, and it's going to be interesting. I do think it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I think that's kind of life, and that's how life goes. And a lot of times humans, we need to get kicked in the groin to figure out what's going on. Unfortunately, right? And I think there's like the 3%, the patriots that gave America, the 97% gave America and went and fought, gave the world America. Kind of like the Bitcoiners right now. Like you have this small group of people who drag everyone else along, and we're like, no, we're not going that way. And that's just kind of how it has to be. And then more people get kicked in the face along the way, and then they join the fight, right? Like, oh, you guys are winning. Oh, okay, we're in now, like or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That hurt, man. Fuck.
Dang it. This is the 6th trucker convoy, really? Okay, well, I'm in this time.
Bro, I'm hungry. Can we stop?
Like, my goodness, what are we doing here? This is the 6th time Trudeau shut you guys down in 6 years. Yeah, it's like, wow, I'm in. 7th time, 8th, 10th time. Okay, okay. Quick side thing before we go. Does Hollywood make a comeback? They've been co-opted by the left. The progressives, the Fabianists, the Marxists, whatever, for dang near 100 years now. Does Hollywood ever make a comeback? Like, what does that look like in your eyes? One in your wheelhouse of, I know you've kind of thought about this over time. What are your thoughts on Hollywood? And how does this play out? How does Hollywood play out, I guess, in the coming years?
Well, I wish I had. I wish I was further along in my development. We're pushing kind of as fast as we can. I'm working on a project building on top of Bitcoin to solve this problem specifically. So I'm bullish Hollywood. There's never been a bigger opportunity to absolutely just destroy the corruption that has taken root. That being said, it's never going to go back to what it was and what made it famous. It won't be Hollywood anymore anyway as a location. That's done as far as I'm concerned. The last time we had a writer's strike, it was the catalyst for major change, and we're here yet again.
When was that, by the way?
2008.
Okay.
So 3 things. This is my theory on major change. If three things happen to any industry at the same time, that industry is guaranteed to implode and be rebuilt. So 3 things happened in 2008 to Hollywood. You had a coalescence or a convergence of political, technological, and economic issues, problems. They all happened exactly at the same time, and the whole industry imploded. You had the financial crisis. Okay. The writers went on strike again. or previously in 2008. And I always say this, but really just is technology. Canon released the 5D Mark II in 2008. And that was a massive game changer. There's a lot of other technologies. I just use that one as an example because it's a famous one. But for the first time, people were able to create images for like sub 50 grand or whatever that were incredible. For $3,000, you could have this full frame camera, and it was an accident. They didn't even mean to do it.
Wow.
And so everything started changing. The whole incentive system, the entire industry collapsed in 2008, and it really didn't pick itself back up until Netflix kind of started taking over. So I think that's happening again. The unions that are going on strike, right? It's like a clown show. It's like totally ridiculous. The technology is allowing for us to fundamentally change all of the issues that filmmakers experience in the business with regards to how money works. People think that it was a competitive business. I realized later on after having been in that it was actually an anti-competitive business, and that was the problem. There was not enough decision making happening at the money level. There was only a few people, and the money was being funneled through a couple of things. So I see right now, and this is what I'm working towards, is a total destruction of the previous model. We're going to go back to a sensible economic model, which is that someone produces a product and they have direct feedback from the person consuming the product. And then that is a virtuous, positive cycle, said as simply as possible. So I think Hollywood, it's going to continue to burn and crash and get destroyed until these publicly traded companies lose so much money that they are forced to change. I don't think that it will happen in Los Angeles much anymore. Like I said, we're at the same thing. Technology is evolved so rapidly and so easily. The level of skill from a filmmaking standpoint is now able to spread itself across the world. And you're seeing studios built all over the place. They're building in Oklahoma.
I know Georgia is a big place, right?
Yeah. Jordan too in the Middle East is becoming quite the hub. So yeah, it's
wow.
We're on the precipice of what I think is incredible potential, but we got to do something to get there.
So last thing here, like what is it? Specifically? You got the pod, stuff like that. Touch on like what you're working on. Like what are you fired up about, and what project you're working on to kind of with Bitcoin, like you mentioned in this world. What does that kind of look like? What's your goal? What's your vision going forward that you're fired up about right now?
So the project I was just mentioning is called Indie Hub. I haven't really said it publicly. We're very, very early. We're working on integrating Lightning right now. It's not available yet for people to check out. But that's my primary focus, and I'm putting all of my energy and efforts into that. I'm working to sort of get this, private beta ready to go and go try to find money and build it on top of Bitcoin on Bitcoin rails, Lightning rails. So that's my number one focus. In the meantime, I started this podcast, The Village Idiot. So you can come join me on my quest to find God. And that's a personal, almost a long form documentary that I'll be doing as interviews, but also a Substack. I'm going to basically critique my episodes and do like a monologue after every episode and say, here's what I didn't understand, or here's what I got wrong, or here's what I want to know more about, reach out to the community and ask for help. So it's just going to be a journey for truth.
Dude, that's awesome. That is too cool. That is, wish I had your background and skill level on that, because that's very cool. Like I love it. I can't wait for you to be really, really rolling in all this, because I think it'll be big. It's going to be an important thing, I think.
Hell yeah. I'd love to hear it, man. And however you want to help out, I can help you get your stuff rolling too. Whatever works, man. We're all on this train together.
That's the beautiful thing about Bitcoin, right? I mean, you go to the conferences, everything, and you look around and everyone's in a different walk of life, everything, but you are all actually on the same mission. It's just nothing like you've ever experienced before. It's truly the most fascinating journey I've ever seen. So where can people find you?
Right now, my Twitter is probably the best, at Idiot for Truth, FORTRUTH. I'm working on that. The Substack isn't totally released yet. I'm trying to start that in the next 2 weeks, July 4th. But just follow me on that Twitter. Everything that everything that's going to get released all the info will get released there. But for now, I'm just kind of shit posting and talking to people and setting up interviews. So yeah, that's the best place for now.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate it a ton, Zach. It's man, we could do this for hours. So many veins. Like I want to go down. We'd be here for longer than Joe Rogan episode, I think. If we, so it means we'll just have to, do it more split up over time. I think is probably what that means.
100%. We'll have a series, man. I'm all for it.
I love it. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, brother.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Oh, wow. What do you think? What did you think? I mean, just an incredible episode. Every single person, like I said, is just, I swear people become smarter and smarter and smarter the more we do this. I absolutely love doing this so much because I learned so much, changed my template, submitting to truth. I'm going to take that going forward forever. And that's really what I believe God is too, right? Finding ultimate truth, finding unwavering truth. God is truth. And that's the mission that the Village Idiot is on. And he's one of the better people I know at explaining what people are truly looking for and what is ailing society, truly. And submitting yourself to truth, not just accepting it, not ignoring it, but submitting to truth and understanding it, using it to your power, using it for your advantage. I think that's the most important thing we can do. So I hope you enjoyed this today with him. Let me know your comments, your questions, your concerns, and who else you would like us to see, or who else you would like to see in the future here. And I truly implore you to do your own homework and go question everything with boldness, even the existence of God himself. For if there is a God, surely he will respect learning and growth over blindfolded fear. I'll see you on the next one.